Hey guys and gals, it's Dr. Marcy, and today we are going to talk about blood sugar. And one of the first things that we're going to do with that is talk about insulin resistance. So there's been a couple of mentions of insulin resistance and why it's important to pay attention to, but I thought it would be good if I could share this whiteboard with you and kind of talk about what exactly happens. So I'm not a good drawer, so I'm going to use these shapes because otherwise we'll have problems. So I'm going to start up here and we're going to say that this is our pancreas. And the job of the pancreas is to make insulin. What you'll notice, if you're somebody who has some digestive issues like IBS, or you have constipation, you've got a lot of bloating and a lot of burping after meals, you may have some problems with your pancreas. And the other thing that you might have is blood sugar numbers that are kind of all over the place. You might have that afternoon hangry feeling. You might wake up so hangry that your stomach is upset and you feel like vomiting. You might also wake up several times throughout the night. So the pancreas is responsible for helping produce insulin, but it's also part of the digestive tract, and it does produce some digestive enzymes that are very important for breaking down food. So then we also have, I'm going to try and make this one a better circle. Our cells. And inside the cell, we have the nucleus, which contains our DNA. And then we have mitochondria. And our mitochondria, if you remember that cell danger response lecture, are the things in the cell that are the powerhouse for the cell. And they are what uses insulin. So I'm going to see if we can, so we've got, this is our cell. These are the mitochondria. Helps if I can spell. And then this is the nucleus. With our DNA. Okay. Let's see if we can move that so we don't get confused on what this is. So what happens when we, I wonder if we can make a triangle. We can. When we eat food. Let's say we have a piece of pizza and we've got some pepperoni and we've got some cheese and a gluten-free crust. Okay. What happens when we eat this piece of pizza is that the pepperoni, to get into the cell, has to be digested in the stomach and broken down into the amino acids. And then the amino acids require B vitamins to get into the cell. Okay. And then the cheese to get into the cell requires fatty acids, and cholesterol require carnitine to get into the cell. Okay. And then we've got this gluten-free crust. And I'm gonna try and draw another line here. And this guy is going into the cell. But to get that guy into the cell, it's broken down in the small intestine to glucose and other sugars. Then insulin tells the cells to take it to the mitochondria. Okay, so that's how the gluten-free crust ends up in our mitochondria, providing energy. So I know this isn't the prettiest drawing, but this is how that system basically works. So what happens in insulin resistance is that we have a few meals throughout the day, right? So we will have breakfast, and then we'll have a snack. And then we'll have lunch. And then in some cases, we'll have a second snack and maybe some coffee. And then we have dinner. And for most people, dinner is their largest meal of the day. But for most of us also, we're eating too close together. And this breakfast is full of things like cereals or oatmeal or breads or muffins or a bagel. And we start our day off on a sugar load. And so when we start the sugar load, it causes the body to have to release insulin right away, which actually makes it more difficult for the pancreas to do the job of digestion, believe it or not. And then we'll have a snack. And especially with our kids, we're really bad about those snacks. They're not a high protein snack. They're a granola bar or a fruit roll up or something like that, right? They're not something great for us. And even if we start our day with eggs at home, and then we have a snack at work, it might be what got brought into the break room. And so it's donuts and pastries and sugary things like that. It's not things that are necessarily healthy for us, right? And then we have lunch, and lunch could be something nutritious and have some protein, but it also typically has some kind of carbohydrate. A lot of people order out for a sandwich, or they go and get a sandwich, or they have pizza for lunch. So they have a hot dog with a bun, those kinds of things. And so they start that sugar cycle with insulin all over again. And then they might have an afternoon snack, and that snack is usually something, again, with sugar in it or carbs in it that maybe aren't the healthiest for us. And then we have dinner, and our dinners typically will contain rice, potato, bread, pasta, things like that, that also require insulin. So what happens when we eat things all day that require insulin is that, and especially when we're eating so close together, the sugar stimulates the pancreas to produce insulin. Insulin is then taken the glucose into the cells. But eventually what happens is the cells go, wait a minute, there's no way there can be this much sugar in the system. I'm not going to listen to insulin, and I'm not going to allow it to be in the system. And so you end up with blood sugar levels that are higher than they should be, blood glucose levels that are higher than they should be. And so then the body has to produce more insulin. And then the cells will listen to it for a little bit, but then you feed it again and it has to produce even more insulin. And so it stops listening again. And so you end up with this cycle of stop listening to insulin, stop listening to insulin. And that is insulin resistance. When we look at our nutrition as a whole, as a society, we don't get enough protein. And protein is a building block. And we can use the protein. but we can't use all of the sugar. And a normal sugar range in your system is about 5.5% in the blood. But when we get up to 6.0, we have that danger response. And when we're at 6.0 and we stay there, or we get higher and we stay there for a long time, we end up with damage to blood vessels, damage to the brain, damage to our muscle tissue, damage to our kidneys, our liver, our pancreas, damage to the small intestine, damage to the heart. So we're damaging literally every system in the body. We're stressing out the adrenal glands because that blood sugar keeps the adrenal glands over functioning. And so we end up in this mess of insulin resistance, diabetes type 2, thyroid dysfunction, kidney dysfunction, adrenal dysfunction, and Alzheimer's or dementia. So how do we stop this? Well, one of the best ways is to actually go down to number 1, eating in a 10-hour window. And you eat one meal at hour 1 of that 10-hour window, and you eat your last meal at about hour 8 of that 10-hour window. Number 1, that gives your body time to use all of the fats, all of the proteins, and manage the insulin and blood sugar in the body. Number 2, your small intestine gets a break and actually gets a chance to break down all the food and absorb all the vitamins and minerals out of it. And all of the organs that produce digestive enzymes are less stressed out. So we can actually change the way we respond to insulin by fasting and by eating more protein. So another thing we would do is cut out packaged foods. If it comes in a package and it has a barcode that you can scan, you probably shouldn't be sticking it in your mouth unless it looks like the animal it came from, right? So if you're cooking an entire chicken and that chicken comes in a package to tell you safe cooking instructions, and then you cut that chicken up and use it over time, great. Your carbohydrates should only be coming from fruits and vegetables for most of the time. What's most? 80 to 90%. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I never have cake. Well, I don't like cake, so I don't eat cake, but I will have the occasional cookie or brownie. My go-to is dark chocolate, and I like to eat 85% dark chocolate. I occasionally also like a tablespoon or so of honey as a sweetener in other things. So I will use that as my sweetener, and I try and buy from a local farm during the spring season so that I'm helping with my allergies. So there are ways that you can get here. In the beginning, when we're trying to make ourselves more sensitive to insulin, we really have to be careful with how much sugar we're allowing in, even of things like honey, cake, etc. And we may need to take 6 weeks or so and have nothing that is a baked good, candy, refined sugar, anything, because we need to reset the system. Some other information about insulin sensitivity: vanadium at 500 micrograms 3 times a week, and chromium at 500 micrograms 3 times a week. Vanadium makes your body more responsive to insulin, and chromium chromium helps with making your body more sensitive to insulin. Vanadium acts as an insulin mimicker, so can get sugars into the cells. If you are eating a lot of sugar, you also probably need a magnesium supplement, and that requires some testing probably for most people. So I want you to watch this video if you need to again. That way you understand what is what and how you're getting things from one place to the other, from it going as food in to blood sugar to proteins to fats. And so that you really understand it, and make sure that if you have any questions, you ask them in the group chat. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.